Hello everyone. This is, I'm trying to do sort of a mix of videos that I want to do. The first obviously being that I'm going to be drawing something, as you can see, and another thing that I've wanted to do on this channel but didn't really know how to best make a video about it is talking about like media, movies, anime, that sort of thing. And I didn't really have an idea of how to talk about that sort of thing, because usually the videos that I see are people who show their face and speak, which I didn't feel comfortable doing, or people who have little PNGs, but that takes a long time, and I don't know if there's some like program that they use or something to get their images to line up, or if it really is just done by hand. But the only way that I know how to do it is by hand, so I've already done a video like that before and it took forever to do, so I didn't really know how to do that sort of video. But through talking to my friend, I kind of thought, well, what if I did a drawing for whatever I'm talking about, and while I'm at it, I can talk, about whatever it is I'm talking about. So I'm going to try that, and we'll just kind of see how it goes. But the first thing on the chopping block is PROMARE. I'm just going into it. I am going to be talking about what happens in the movie and the plot and all that sort of thing. So if you haven't seen it and you don't want any spoilers, this unfortunately is going to have spoilers in it, but it's okay. So just fair warning. So PROMARE is a movie from 2019 made by Studio Trigger. I didn't end up seeing it until 2020 or 2021 because it wasn't released internationally, it was just in Japan at the time. So what is it about? We'll start there. So PROMARE it takes place in a city called Promepolis, I believe. I don't actually know how to pronounce it, I'm so sorry. But it takes place in this city, and 30 years ago, there was this big event where certain people all of a sudden got flame powers. And powers is maybe not the right word, because most of the time they can't control it, or some of the time they can't control it. When it first happened, it was crazy. No one knew what was going on. It was just happening. It was a little wild. But after that, the world, but also specifically this city, had to interact with these people. They're called the Burnish. Had to interact with these people all the time because they would cause fires, and then the firefighting team would have to put it out, and people were distressed, and they were like, oh my god, the Burnish are burning down all of our property. So the world had to change to kind of accommodate that. And the main people that I guess you need to know going into it is Gallo, who's our main character. And we also have other people. He's part of the firefighting team, and he's got other people on his team. You got Ignis, who's the captain. He's the head honcho, for lack of a better term. You got Varys, Remy, Lucia, she makes the technology. She's the inventor. She's the science girl, and Ina. So that's the firefighting squad. You also have Cray Foresight, who is kind of like the mayor, the governor. He's the governor, but he's kind of like a mayor. He just kind of runs Promepolis, and just, does whatever. And you also have other people that we'll get into down the line, but that's kind of who you need to know starting out. So at the beginning, we're introduced to Gallo and the firefighting team. There's fires going on, and Gallo is very... He isn't anti-burnish, but he doesn't like fires. He really hates fires. He's very passionate about his work. And he's kind of a hotshot in the sense of, like, he likes to show off. He likes to be the cool one. He likes to, you know, when he's putting out fires, they have mechs that they use to, like, go when they fight fires. They put on these mech suits. So he likes to, like, have special weapons and do cool stunts and that sort of thing. And everyone is kind of like, oh my god, Gallo, like, what is wrong with you, please? And he really looks up to Cray. They have a history, so that's why he really looks up to him. But at the beginning, they're fighting this fire. Gallo and the team, they're fighting this fire. And while they're there, they come across the Mad Burnish. And the Mad Burnish are kind of a rebel group of Burnish. In my head, they, like, burn down property to prove a point, you know? And to kind of mess with the town and the government, to be like, you guys suck, we hate you, we're gonna burn stuff just because. That's the vibe they give off, at least. And so there's the two little guys named Mace and Guerra. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I've never really known. And they're in the Mad Burnish. They're just members. They're hanging out. They got motorcycles. They're cool. And you've got the boss, which he's like crazy scary to everybody. I'm not really sure why. Just because he's the boss and he's in charge. And they all have, like, these suits of armor. They're kind of like mechs, but they're more armor. They're more like armor than, like, the mechs that the firefighting team uses. And Gallo decides, I'm gonna fight that guy. That guy is mine. I gotta fight him just because. Just because I just has to be done. So he does. They fight. And he, in the process, breaks off part of the boss's mask. And he sees his face. And that's the first time that we actually see Leo. And this is Leo. I'm drawing him on the screen. I love him. He's perfect. Anyway, yeah, so Leo is the boss of the Mad Burnish. So he just says what's going on. And everyone is kind of surprised because they thought that the boss of the Mad Burnish has been around ever since the Mad Burnish had been around, and I believe they've been around since the beginning of the whole thing, like when the Burnish suddenly started appearing. But I don't know if that part is true, but Leo actually isn't. He hasn't been the boss for long. He kind of just started. So he's actually canonically not 30. I don't know canonically his age, but some people have said, oh, he's 30, but I don't actually think that he is. But I digress. Not important. Anyway, in this fight, Leo and the rest of the Mad Burnish are arrested by Vulcan. And Vulcan is a guy. He works for the Freeze Force, which is essentially the police for Burnish. They just go around and, like, arrest people just because. And the firefighting team doesn't really like them because they kind of intrude in, like, when they're fighting fires. They just sort of show up and, like, get in the way. So there's kind of, like, some animosity there. But they take Leo and Mace and Guerra away. And Gallo kind of doesn't really think about the Burnish that much. Like I said, he just doesn't like fires. But he's never really interacted with Burnish people before. So he doesn't really know what it's like, you know? And the movie is basically about him kind of changing in interacting with the Burnish. So he he sees some stuff go down. He sees some Burnish get arrested, and he doesn't really think it's right, but he can't really do anything about it because he would be going against the cops, essentially, and they're a little crazy. And they have freeze guns, which the firefighting team also has, but the freeze force, like, obviously their name is the freeze force, they use freezing to capture the Burnish. And it's some sort of special ice too, where Burnish flames aren't supposed to be able to burn through it. So that's why they use it. So Gallo kind of starts seeing like, oh, well, it actually kind of sucks to be Burnish, and people are getting arrested for seemingly no reason. Like, they're not causing any trouble, because a lot of Burnish people are just trying to, like, fit into society and kind of keep it a secret that they're Burnish, because then they would get arrested. But they don't purposefully burn down buildings. The only people who are doing that are the mad Burnish, so really, it's them who he should be mad at. But it's just everyone's getting arrested, and he kind of doesn't... He doesn't think it's right to go around and prosecute all these people. And it's then that we kind of get more insight into Cray foresight. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. Because Gallo really looks up to him, because they've had... When Gallo was young, he had his house burned down from Burnish flames, in case you were wondering. And his parents died, but he was rescued by Cray, and this was before Cray was governor or whatever. He was rescued, and I don't know if Cray, like, raised him. I don't think Cray raised him. He just saved him and kind of has been sort of involved in his life. And Gallo goes to see him sometimes and talk to him and stuff, so he does have that, but it's not really like a father-son relationship. But Gallo does, like, admire him a lot and is very, respects him. So we're introduced to him. Gallo says hello, you know, all this stuff. There's some sort of, like, ceremony thing that goes on, and it's really not important. It's just, you do kind of get the backstory from Gallo about why he looks up to Cray so much is because he saved his life. But meanwhile, Leo, Guerra, Mace, they're all arrested, and they're brought to this facility of ice, basically. And Leo is the boss, and he's supposed to, like... I don't know if this is actually true, or if they just think this because he's the boss, but they believe that he has, like, really strong flames, and he needs to be, like, mega contained. And so they have their hands, like, frozen together. I think they also have boxes, like a big crate around their hands, too, so they can't, like, use their flames. And so they are put into this room with other Burnish. They're not doing well. Leo is mad, and they're like, we gotta get out of here. And through a series of intense events, they do escape. Leo manages to ignite his flames so quickly that he melts the ice. He breaks out of his containment. He helps his friends escape, and they try to catch them, but Leo gets out, and he escapes. And he ends up, like, Gallo goes out, I think, just to think about life. He's just kind of upset about what happened. The stuff that he saw, the people that got arrested, he's kind of upset about that. So he goes to a frozen lake, which is where he goes to think and exist and that sort of thing. And Ina is there. She, like, chases after him because he took off in a hurry. They have a bit of a conversation. But while they're there, Gallo sees this thing in the sky, which is actually, like, Leo. And he's like, whoa, that's crazy. And he goes to investigate, and I'm pretty sure they catch him. He, like, tries to sneak up on them, and they kind of, like, catch him. They kind of knock him out, you know, tie him up, whatever. But he sees, like, these kids, and they're burnished, and so he's like, oh my god. But then he's like, wait, but they're kids, though. Like, they're not doing anything. They're not dangerous. Because it's kind of, like, societally taught that the burnish are dangerous, all of them. And he kind of hasn't really had to think about it before, because he doesn't know any, you know? He's never met a burnish person before. And he just knows that they light fires, and he doesn't like that, so whatever. So he gets captured, he's in this cave, and he's restrained, but he's fine. And he's just like, oh my god, what the hell are you doing? Like, what's going on? And Leo is there. And he recognizes him, they recognize each other. And Leo basically just tells him, like, there's this woman there, and she's kind of she's not looking good. She's kind of fading away, she's pale, she looks like ash, and she starts to kind of break into ash. And so Gallo's like, what is going on? And Leo tells him that this is something that happens to the burnish. And they basically turn to ash and then break apart and fade away and die. And Leo, attempts to save this woman's life by giving her some of his flame. He kind of tries to, like, CPR it into her. And it kind of looks like she might be taking it and be revitalized for a second, but then it doesn't work, and she loses it, and she dies. And Gallo is really, like, shaken at this point, and Leo tells him, like, hey, you know, this happens to my people all the time. This is what I'm trying to stop, is, like, we're all dying because of Cray. And Gallo's like, because of Cray? What are you talking about? And Leo's like, they're doing experiments. They're messing with the burnish. Like, they're doing really bad stuff in his stupid tower. And Gallo's like, oh my god, like, I had no idea. And Leo, I think, kind of realizes that Gallo genuinely didn't know what was going on. And so he's a bit like, okay, well, you're stupid, but you just didn't know. But I'm not gonna, like, let you free or whatever, but I'm just gonna bail. So they all leave, and they basically have to live on the run because the Freeze Force are coming after them, and, you know, all this stuff. And so Gallo is like, okay, hold the phone. He escapes. I think Aina comes to save him. He escapes, and he's like, I gotta see what is up. He goes to Cray. He's like, hey, asking for a friend. Is it true that you're doing human experimentation on the burnish? And Cray is like, yeah. And Gallo's like, what the hell? But Cray is like, let me show you why. And he takes him down. He's got this, like, secret basement inventing center. And he essentially says, there is a buildup of magma under the earth. It's getting really hot. And soon it is going to erupt. All the volcanoes are going to erupt. The entire earth is going to be covered in magma, and we are all going to die. And there is no way to stop this magma. We've looked into it. There's nothing we can do. But I'm building a spaceship that we can fit people onto, and we can evacuate, go to another planet, and continue our lives there. Because the earth is going to be gone. And so Gallo is like, oh my god, like, that's crazy, but what do you need the burnish for? And Cray is like, well, we need to be able to go, like, really far, because there's no inhabitable planets anywhere near us, so we have to travel hundreds or thousands of light years away to find something. And we figured out how to make warp technology, but the way that we need for that to happen is to use burnish power. We have to use them and spin them around, basically, and get their energy in order to open up a portal, basically, to warp. And Gallo's like, doesn't know what to think at this point. He's like, well, that's messed up. He does still think that. He is like, that's messed up. But he's also like, but we're all gonna die. But that's still messed up. And I think it's at that point that Cray, like, arrests him. He takes him into custody. He's like, you can't tell anyone, though. And Gallo's like, what? I thought you were my dad. And Cray's like, I'm not your dad. What's wrong with you? And so he kind of locks him up. And he tells the firefighting team that Gallo is arrested because he tried to attack Cray. And they're like, oh my god, Gallo would never. Like, what? Did he really do that? And Ina is really worried, and she's kind of like, there's no way. And she has a sister who works for Cray. Her name is Harris, I believe. I think that's how you pronounce it, anyway. But her sister, Harris, she's basically the main warp girl. Like, she did the technology, she did all the stuff. But Ina doesn't know about, like, the burnish aspect of it. She just thinks her sister is, like, this great inventor, and she made warp drive, how cool. But she doesn't know the details. And so she goes to talk to her sister, and her sister is basically like, what? No, yeah, he totally, like, tried to kill him. Like, I don't know. And Ina is like, that's not like Gallo, though. But Harris is like, I don't know, like, I don't know. And Harris really only cares about Ina, and so that's why she's working on this project to build this spaceship, is because she wants Ina to be able to escape on it. So she just doesn't tell her anything. And she's just like, listen, it's gonna be fine. Don't worry. You're good. As long as you're happy, it's fine. And Gallo is in prison. Leo is on the run. And we cut back to Leo, and he's with the Burnish. They found, like, a hideout, but they get found by the Freeze Force, and everyone's kind of taken into custody. They're shot and put in, like, these big blocks of ice. Everyone's freaking out, and the Mad Burnish try to fight back, but it's not really working. And Vulcan shoots, I think it's Vulcan, at least someone on the Freeze Force shoots Leo with this specially designed bullet, which basically uses they shoot him basically in the chest, and it uses whenever he tries to use his flames, there's, like, ice around the bullet, the ice expands. So the more he tries to use his flame, the more his entire body will be frozen from the inside out. And he's like, oh god, that sucks. And everyone's like, oh god, what are we gonna do? So Guerra and Mace, they shoot him. They, like, have this cannon, they form this cannon, and they shoot him into a volcano, which is a little crazy. But they want him to escape being caught by the Freeze Force, and both are caught themselves. And Leo, he ends up in the volcano, and he's kind of being frozen. He's trying to use his flames, he's trying to get out, it's not really working, but he manages to escape. He manages to burn so quickly that the bullet can't keep up. And he breaks out, and he is fine, he escapes, and he is pissed off. He is so beyond pissed off because everyone has been captured. Everyone has been captured. He just got shot by this bullet. It's crazy. And so he is losing his mind, and he kind of takes on this like fiery form where he's just lost it, and he doesn't become a dragon, but he sort of has this dragon of flames around him, and he goes all the way to the city. He's looking for Cray. He's like, come out, coward, fight me right now, I'm gonna kill you. He's lost his mind, and he kind of causes damage to the city. He kind of knocks out the tower a little bit, and Gallo is able to escape because there's damage to his cell. He gets out, and he's like, oh my god, it's Leo. And he ends up getting onto, because it's like their flames are like flames, but they can also be kind of a solid thing, because they're like a really special magical flame. And Gallo ends up getting up there, getting Leo, trying to cool him off. He's like, get away from me. But they end up contained. I think Aina actually like contains them. And so Gallo's with Leo locked in this box. They're flying on a little ship, and Aina drops them off at the like frozen lake again, because she's like, you need to cool off. And so they fall, and Leo melts the entire lake. Like, that's how crazy he was going. The entire lake melts, but he's like finally calm. He's back to his normal state, and he's just like, okay, I don't know what just happened, but whatever. And in this frozen lake, they discover that under the ice there's been this like secret lab that no one knew was there, and they go in there. I think Aina like lands and meets them and goes in there too, and they come across this guy. He's kind of like a little. He's basically a guy put his soul into a computer, and he kind of has this little form that goes around. So they meet him, and they're like, who the hell are you? And he is, I think it's Deuce. Look, the names are a little hard for me sometimes, but he's a doctor guy, or not a doctor. He's a scientist guy, and he's like, yeah, so I know the Burnish, I know what's up, and basically what it is there's this kind of like, I don't know if it's another dimension or if it's just far away in space, but there's some sort of place where the Burnish flames come from. They're like aliens, and here on Earth there are certain people who have, like, there's a resonant frequency between them, and they are the Burnish. They are the ones that the actual Burnish creatures, like the little aliens, they burn through this vessel, basically. And Leo has said some stuff before where he's like, oh yeah, we have to burn, like, we have this drive, and it's not like fully within our control. Like, we can make it happen, but the flames are inside us, and they just kind of, they control us in a way. So he's like, yeah, there's like this weird overlapping in the dimensions with that place and this place, so that's why the Burnish people came to be, is because these aliens interact with us, or, well, not all of us, but some of us here on Earth, and that's what it is. And it's also revealed that Cray used to work for him, or work with him, and Cray murdered him, and sort of like took all of his work and his inventions, and was just overall like a bad guy. And they all find this out, and they're like, oh my god, that's crazy, nobody knew this, that's wild. And he's like, but I put my soul in the computer. But anyway, he tells Gallo and Leo that he has a special surprise for them, and that they need to stop Cray, and that I think he also says that there is a way to deal with the magma using the PROMARE, which is the flames. That's what they're called. I don't know why I haven't been calling them that. But that's what PROMARE is that's what the flames are called, the little creatures. So I think he also says that they can do that they can use that to, like, help with the magma situation. And they're like, okay, well, we'll just figure it out, I guess. And he gives them a big old mech, and they kind of pilot it together, sort of. And they go off to go fight Cray and to stop him because he's gonna launch his ship, and they don't want that to happen. And people I think it's only 1,000 people or 10,000 people who can fit, or 100,000 people. It's something like that. Not the whole population can fit on the ship, so people have been sending out invitations for certain people to get on the ship. Ina was one of them because her sister wanted her to make it out alive. So that's all going down. They're getting ready to go. And I believe that the magma situation is getting worse because the PROMARE, they're like all in the earth. They're connected to the earth in a way. And so because Cray is, draining the energy from so many Burnish, he's aggravating the PROMARE, and so they're just getting more and more like intense and unpredictable, which is making the earth kind of start to freak the hell out. And so they're like, we gotta shut this whole thing down, we gotta save those people, we gotta because everything, it's crazy, and we're all gonna die. And they go there, they're talking to Cray, they're trying to fight him, and I think Cray ends up, maybe that was before, sorry, I'm losing track a little bit, but no, it's gotta be after. Okay, they try to fight Cray. He's got like a whole plan in place. He has a mech of his own. It's kind of crazy. And at some point along this track, he ends up capturing Leo. And Gallo is like, what the hell, dude? And they're fighting, and it's revealed that Cray is Burnish himself. And that he, not purposely, he accidentally burned. He's the one who started the fire at Gallo's house. It was an accident, but he, lit the house on fire because he lost control. But he couldn't have his reputation ruined or anything. He couldn't let anyone know. And he just kind of ran in to save Gallo, and he was praised for it, and he was like, oh, okay. And Gallo's like, oh my god, that's crazy. And Leo is kind of a hostage, but kind of not. He's kind of being used. They want to get him to fuel the portal the rest of the way, because again, he's got strong flames or something. And so Gallo's like, no, I'm not letting that happen. And he ends up fighting Cray himself, and Leo is there. I think he spares Cray. He could kill him, but he doesn't. And Leo is not doing well. He's kind of been burned so much through this, trying to get the portal to work, that he's kind of turning into ash like that woman did before. And when Gallo was fighting Cray, Leo gave him a little bit of flame to protect him, because Cray also had flames, and he's been holding them in this whole time, so they're super, super strong. But Leo's flame kind of went around Gallo and protected him, so he has that little spark left with him. And Leo's dying, so Gallo's like, okay, I know what I gotta do. I gotta do that CPR thing that he was doing to that girl. And so he, for some reason, he puts the flame in his mouth, and he just goes mouth to mouth with Leo and just hangs out there. But it works. The flame goes into Leo. He gets, gets revitalized, and he's like, oh my god, Gallo. Oh my god. And Gallo's like, oh my god. And then they're like, alright, we took down Cray, we stopped the ship's kind of messed up right now it's time to save the world. So then they go, and I think they just cover the Earth with flames with the Promare, and everything's kind of chill. They like protect all the people, and everything kind of, like, the magma does kind of come out, things start erupting, but they kind of keep it contained, and then everything is fine. And then they look out at the world and they're like, wow, we did that, guys, crazy. And that's it. So that's the plot. I think I didn't do a great job of explaining it, I'm so sorry. But now, I just want to talk about some of the things that I love about this movie, because I love this movie. First thing, just because we just talked about it, is the plot. I love it. I think it's super cool. I think it's an interesting idea. I also, one of the things that I really liked about the plot, and it's also, I guess, kind of the character, but mostly it's plot, is that you're kind of in the same place as Gallo, where, like, you don't really know what's going on, and then you kind of see parts of the world, and you're like, the parts that society has made itself see, you know, like, you only see the destruction that the Burnish have caused. You only see, like, them being considered dangerous, and you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, they're causing damage, they're dangerous, I understand. But then, like Gallo, you realize, oh, well, there are people who are just minding their own business who are also being, like, arrested and punished and actually tortured, but we don't know that yet. They're being, like, that's why they're being arrested. That's crazy. And so then you kind of start to feel bad, and you're like, oh, well, like, yeah, Leo and his merry band of goons are going around burning half the city just because, but, like, this guy who's just trying to make pizzas, like, he's just arrested for nothing, for just existing. And then you meet Leo, and he explains, like, we're going through so much, we have to live on the run, we're getting chased, and so many people I know are dying because they're being experimented on, and you're like, oh my god, what? And it's just like, as Gallo learns this new information, you kind of, like, switch sides, because you're like, okay, the Burnish light fires, that sucks, I guess. Then you're like, well, it's kind of unfair, though. And then you meet Leo, and you're like, oh my god, this is crazy. What is happening? But then you meet Cray, and you're like, what the hell? And then you're like, oh, but we're all gonna die. And that's the only way. I get, like, why you're doing that. Like, it's messed up. It's still messed up, but I see, like, why you think it's important anyway. But then it's like, okay, well, actually, later on, you're like, well, actually, there are maybe other ways that we just didn't think about, so we can shut this down. And I just like that. I liked that a lot. I liked that you were getting, like, little bits and pieces of the plot naturally, as Gallo did, and you kind of switch sides where you're like, I don't know who to believe. Like, you're both in the right, but also not in the right. But, like, obviously, experimenting and torturing people is a lot worse than burning down a skyscraper, you know? I mean, they get the people out and stuff. Like, people don't die. I think Leo makes a point of that. He says, yeah, we do destruction, but we never hurt people. That's, like, our thing, is we do cause damage, and we do make, like, the public officials, like, worry about it and pay for it and fix it, but we never intentionally hurt anyone. So then it's like, okay, you're actually not that bad. Like, I thought you were bad, but you're actually not that bad. But I was in love with Leo, so, like, it didn't matter to me. But anyway, so I just really liked that. I thought it was very interesting, and I loved, like, going back and forth between everyone, or, like, between the sides, and kind of being like, oh, I get you, but no, and oh, I get you, but no, but then, oh yeah, you're actually kind of right, and, you know, it was cool. The second thing is the characters. Obviously, like I said, I like Leo. But I think character-wise, in an arc sense, they're nothing like super super crazy or anything, but like Leo seems bad, like he's doing bad things, but he's actually a good guy, and he's not, like he said, he doesn't hurt anyone. It's just for the statement, And Gallo, it makes sense why he'd be feeling the way that he does, but then he changes, he questions himself, and he's like, hey, this is actually kind of messed up. I shouldn't feel this way. I shouldn't be angry. It's not their fault. And Cray, you're like, okay, I get, like, you're trying to save the world, but also it's kind of like, well, you kind of suck, though. Like, you're doing something noble, but you're not a good guy. And that's just cool. I think that's a good dynamic to have someone who's doing, societally viewed, is doing bad things, but is actually doing it for good reasons, and then someone who's doing, like, a good thing, kind of, or it's like good on paper, but he's going about it in a bad way, and he also just is a bad person, pretending to be like this hero. And then you got someone in the middle who's like, I looked up to you and you kind of betrayed me and I hated you, but now I understand where you're coming from, So I just think that's a good kind of dynamic. And also the designs are amazing. Like, they're so cool. I think they're so fun. I really love the stuff that Studio Trigger makes. Because, I mean, I haven't seen all of it, but I have seen a few things from them. And I love their visual style. I think it's really unique and cool to look at. So yeah, all the character designs are really cool, I think. They're all very unique. And speaking of character design, I also gotta say, the animation, the visuals, amazing. Incredible. The colors are beautiful. The landscapes, the scenes, the backgrounds, amazing. The fight scenes, crazy. Like, the camera's going all over the place. There's all these designs. People are breaking through windows, but it still looks amazing. And you're like, oh my god, what is happening? And it's always so chunky, but beautiful, and it's just amazing. It's great. You really have to see it for yourself, because I can't even describe how it looks. And granted, I'm sure there are people who they have certain tastes in animation. Maybe they don't like the style, but I think it's sick. So, yeah, really gotta commend that. It's visually stunning, and it's like you already have so much going for you, but then you have that. It's crazy. And the last part of it, I think, that I really love is the music. The soundtrack is by Hiroyuki Sawano, who is amazing. I love him. I love his work. He did the soundtrack. I don't know if he did all of it, but he did at least a lot of the soundtrack for Attack on Titan. He's worked on a bunch of other projects. He's been he's composed different individual songs for movies, and he's also done the full soundtrack. He's great. I recommend listening to his works. But the music for PROMARE is so good. It's so good. I all the songs in and of themselves are great. I love them. But I also, one of my favorite things about the soundtrack, and just throwing this out there, I do play piano, or keyboard really, I should say. I don't know how to read sheet music. I don't know. I like music an awful lot, but I'm not classically trained or trained at all in music. So this is just coming from the perspective of someone who listens to soundtracks, loves music in general, but who doesn't have a lot of technical knowledge when it comes to it. Just putting that out there. But one of my favorite things about the PROMARE soundtrack is the different sounds that they use and how they kind of mix them all together. Because they have they have a lot of technical electric sounding sounds. like, yeah, like technological electronic sounds. But they also have a lot of like taiko, and sort of more traditional Japanese sounds, but also just more traditional instruments in general, like strings and flutes and drums and that sort of thing. And it's kind of weird to think about something so new and technological mixing with something so traditional, and you might not think that works on paper, but it sounds so good. The way that they've mixed the two together, I think, is it came out beautifully. I also really like that, like the duality of that, I guess I can say, having both those kind of contradicting sounds, because they kind of, and maybe this is my own interpretation, I don't know how much of this was on purpose and how much was a happy accident, but the electric kind of new sounds that are kind of more plinky plonky and kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but those sounds are kind of more on like Crae's sounds, Leo's sounds, like some, or them kind of finding stuff out. Like the tracks that are used in those moments have more of that new, crisp, crunchy, quick kind of sound, and with various moods and such. You know, Crae is maybe a bit more spooky sounding than like Leo or something. But Leo also has like softer moments. He's got like piano, he's got strings, he's got, you know, and Gallo, I will say they do use these songs in various different scenes. It doesn't necessarily apply to strictly these characters, but a lot of the songs where like Gallo is fighting, the team is fighting, the people, they're like sticking to their guns and they're just going for it. They're like the taiko, they're the traditional instruments, they're like strong and repetitive and going for it, and they're loud and living up to who they, and that just, to me, it just feels like Gallo in a nutshell. As it sounds kind of weird, but it's kind of like taking two opposites, which is what they do with the characters, because it's like you've got Gallo who's trying to fight for what he thinks is right and what he's learned is right, through his own experiences and talking to people who are going through it, versus, say, Crae, who is not doing the right thing. He's saying like, oh, I'm saving the world, but he's like torturing people to do that, you know? And it's like, well, why is that okay though, you know? Having those two contradicting characters meet in like a song that is contradicting sound is like, it's just really cool to me. And also with Leo, like taking either something that's a bit kind of electronic sounding or newer sounds, or the sort of like strings, piano, that is still kind of contradicting with like a really heavy taiko drum, but having that together and have it work so well is also like, well, we're highlighting that Leo and Gallo might be different and might have completely different lives, come from completely different places, and be completely like opposite ends of the spectrum here for character, but they work together and they're after the same goal, that sort of thing. I just think that's really cool. And again, maybe that was intentional, maybe it wasn't, but I think it just adds an extra layer, you know, because you've got the visuals that are amazing, you've got the designs, the character arcs, the plot, all super, super cool. And throw on top of it a sick soundtrack that sounds amazing and also kind of encompasses this idea of like differences but bringing them together. I just think it's amazing. So I, again, will just say I'm not an animator, I'm not a trained musician. I just like to make art. I like to look at art. I love a good movie. I love a story, a good story. I love all that sort of stuff. So I'm really just coming at this from a very casual perspective. And I don't know, all the technical stuff that goes into it, because there are people who are way smarter than me about a lot of this stuff, but just in my own opinion, I think PROMARE is really, really cool. It's an amazing experience, and maybe you may not agree, but I think if you haven't seen it, sorry for spoiling if you haven't seen it, but if you haven't seen it, I really recommend watching it. I adore it. I don't know what my favorite movie is, but it's absolutely up there. It's definitely my favorite Japanese-made movie, but it could very well be my favorite movie ever. I love it so much from every standpoint. Like I said, music, design, character, animation, everything. It's amazing. And I really recommend that you give it a watch. And if you've watched it before, watch it again, dude. Watch it for the 10th time. Watch it for the 100th time. Rewatch it, please. It's amazing. It deserves attention. But yeah. So that is basically the end. This is the drawing that I made. And it was kind of a bit different than the stuff that I've been putting out. And I don't know if this will be interesting. But I thought I'd give it a shot. So let me know if you would like to see more of these. I've got other stuff I can talk about. And yeah. Also, I'm down for any suggestions you might have, or if there's any other ways you'd like to see me do this sort of thing, like talk about movies or anime or something like that. If there's another way you'd rather I present it, you can leave a comment. Let me know. I'd be interested to see. But yeah, that's the end. This is the final product, as you can see. Let me know what you thought, and if you liked the video, you could give me a like if you wanted to, or you could subscribe if you want to see more stuff. I will try to do different things, and if you have any suggestions, like I said, let me know. But yeah, that's it, and hope you enjoyed, and hope to see you in the next video.